I was told there aren't tea drinkers in Montana. Well, I knew the history of Montana, and the people that settled here first were tea drinkers.
The following is a Big Sky Economic Development production.
It's Mars B.
And Kavo.
And this is The Vault at 201 North Broadway.
A business podcast.
Where we bring you entrepreneurs, small business owners, and community leaders of Montana.
To share their stories, expertise, industry insights, and strategies.
And we are sharing them all with you every single week.
You don't want to miss this.
Learn how to better start, manage, and grow your business.
And your leadership style.
Tangible takeaways to save you time and improve whatever it is that you're working on.
You're listening to The Vault.
Thank you to Big Sky Economic Development for supporting The Vault at 201 North Broadway. Big Sky Economic Development provides leadership and resources for business creation, expansion, retention, new business recruitment, community development, and workforce development. Learn more at bigsky.economicdevelopment.org.
Today joining us on The Vault is the Riza Gilpin. We are delighted to have you. We're so excited to talk to you and share with everybody your entrepreneurship journey.
And with Tumblewood Teas.
Thank you. Yes, and I can't tell you how humbled I am that you would make me part of the podcast series. I've been listening to them, and they are really interesting and well done.
Good.
And I love to listen to the two of you banter back and forth.
Good.
The guests you've had have been extremely informative. I've learned a lot.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, that means a lot because you've done a lot. And so for us to be teaching you something, that makes me happy.
No, believe me, there's always something to learn.
Oh, yes.
So we really like, as you know, if you listen, to just talk a little bit and kick the episodes off with, you know, where are you from? Where'd you grow up? What was your upbringing like? So we'll just turn it over to you.
Okay.
How it all started.
Yeah, where did it start? April 9th on an Easter Sunday. I was born in Brooklyn, New York.
Wow. I have cousins that live in Brooklyn.
Yay, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Well, I lived there for 3 days. And
True New Yorker.
Yeah, seriously, we moved to the suburbs, and that's where I grew up, in a town called East Meadow in New York. And it was the best childhood anybody could ever ask for, I have to admit. Great loving family, friends, and good environment, great school. Mm-hmm. It was just a good place to start.
And what were some of your hobbies growing up? Some things you liked to do?
I was a kid, you know. I was always very curious. Asked a lot of questions, still do. And honestly, being outside was important for me. I can remember just laying on my back in the middle of the yard looking up at the clouds and, you know, creating these stories in my head from the clouds. I was an outside kid. I didn't read a lot when I was younger. I did read what I was supposed to in school, but I wasn't a big reader. I have only become one now. As a matter of fact, I joined a book club.
Oh, good for you.
And I mean, I'm talking about reading things that I wouldn't ordinarily gain information from. I was always reading things that taught me something. It was never just a fun novel.
Oh,
you know?
yes. A fiction, a good murder mystery.
Good murder mystery, yeah. And I'm doing it now, and I'm loving it. I'm very grateful for that.
That's the power of a book club, though, because everybody gets to pick a book that they want everybody else to read. So something that you wouldn't ordinarily pick is something you get to try out.
Yeah, it makes me a little nervous when I have to recommend a book, because I know they don't want to do self-help, and they don't want it. And that's where my go-to was.
Yeah.
So I'm expanding on what I offer to the group, and it's really been pretty funny and interesting. But honestly, what have I tried just about everything. I mean, you know, as far as sports go, I loved all sports. Not that I was good at them all, but I enjoyed playing them. Racquetball became a really big part of my life as a 20-year-old and a little bit later than that, and found that I had a bit of a killer instinct, which was kind of interesting. Yeah, my poor husband. I created a really great killer serve that nobody could return, and it was fun. That was a good sport for me.
Have you jumped on the pickleball craze?
I have. I have to say, you have to overcome tennis and racquetball bad habits on the pickleball court.
I agree.
And I have to say, the funny story, the very first time I was going to play, a friend of mine encouraged me, so I got a really good racket, and I was ready, or paddle, excuse me. And I was invited to play with this pretty elite little group on a Sunday morning. And it was my first time ever playing.
Oh, how stressful.
They were replacing somebody that couldn't make it. And it was a bit stressful, but to the spirit of trying everything, I said, yes, I'll play. And I was like a little kid that morning going to camp for the first time. I think I had to be at the court at 9, and I was up at 7 ready to go. I was ready to go. So I got there. It was on an outdoor court. There were the 4 of us on the court. My friend showed me the rules of the game right then and there, gave me the serve first, and on the very first move I made, I blew out a cyst that I didn't know I had in the back of my knee. Went down,
God.
and that was how I started to play pickleball.
Oh, wow.
I had to limp off the court. They had to find a replacement for their replacement. It took me like 3 months to get back on the court.
Shoot.
Yeah, it was crazy.
But you weren't letting that stop you.
Absolutely not.
Back
No.
stronger than ever.
So I really enjoy it. I don't play on a regular basis, but I do get to play, and I do like it. I'm a little bit leery about hurting myself now.
Yeah,
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
blame you. So did you stay in New York a long time? How long were you in New York State?
I didn't leave New York until I was 21. I'm trying to remember exactly when I left it. It was a great experience. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't live there today because this is better, but
It's too fast.
to grow up, I actually worked in the city
Oh, wow.
for a year on the 46th floor on Park Avenue.
Wow.
And it was a very interesting job that I can tell you about if you're interested.
Yeah,
But-
we're interested.
We're interested.
So, it was, I got it through a placement agency. So one of the first interviews they sent me on was Mattel Toys.
Oh, wow.
I wanted that job so bad.
Me
I can't
too.
tell you. Oh, you walked into this place, and I mean, it was Kids Center. The colors of the walls, the toy rooms that they tested with kids. I needed to be there. They didn't need me.
Dang it.
So I was really bummed. And then I went on a couple of other. I think there was some fancy fashion deal that didn't really suit me. And plus, it was a switchboard that was the size of that wall.
Wow.
Yeah, I was glad I didn't get that job. But then they sent me to a place called the Population Council, which was an international nonprofit that taught family planning throughout the world.
Wow.
This was in 1968.
Okay.
So you can imagine the intensity of that information was new. And I don't know how much I can say on this podcast, but my office was very, very small, and it was shared with a very graceful, charming young woman from Boston, very proper. And, we were like Mutt and Jeff. I mean, it was really funny. So I was dating a guy that was an artist at the time, and he did all these paintings. That my side of the room was all this creative stuff. Well, family planning, includes all different types of birth control.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a mobile out of IUDs. And when when she walked in that day and saw this thing hanging from the ceiling, she wasn't sure she could stand it. We turned into very good friends, and it was a lot of
complimented
fun.
one another.
Very much so. Well, she complimented me. We had a lot of fun. But I spent that year learning a lot. At a young age and being very impressionable, I always put myself in situations that were new. So I learned about the world around me in that year. It also stepped up my metabolism because you are on guard the whole time. I was a kid from the suburbs, and here I was in the city, jam-packed with people.
And you have to walk everywhere.
And I walked and walked and walked. I took the buses. I did not like the subway even then, so I stayed above ground as much as I could. Mm-hmm. But I have to say, I went to school at night. I went to FIT, which was a couple of blocks from Penn Station. So I would get up at 6 a.m, be on the train platform by 7, get on a train for an hour and a little bit more, get on 2 buses, and get to my office.
Wow.
I would do the full day until 5. Then I would leave the office and grab a hot dog on the street.
Oh, dirty water dogs. Love them.
They were so good.
Oh, yeah.
And at 19, your metabolism can stand that kind of stuff. Then I'd get on another bus and head to school at night. Mm-hmm. And I was in school until 10.
Oh, wow.
And by that time, it was dark, and I would take my heels off because I was dressed still from work, and I would jog 2 blocks to Penn Station, get on an 11 o'clock train, go home. If I had some homework to do, I'd try to get it done, and then do it again the next day. And this was for a year. By the end of that year, I knew I was done.
I just was like, I'm tired for you.
I'm tired from then. And I knew I had to leave. It was time to leave the city. So I packed up my stuff and went home to my parents' house and redecorated my room and made a cozy little space for myself, enrolled in a local community college, and got a job. And that's where life started to slow down a little bit for me. And I valued the slower life. I realized I was not built for the city life. So yeah.
Had that same realization
as
well. Yes, it's just too fast over there, and I don't like it.
Yeah,
people don't enjoy the moments.
They don't realize they're not even. Everybody's kind of numb. I think that's my take on it.
So you said you were about 21 when you. So what pulled you out of New York, and where did you go? Why'd you go?
So at the place that I was working. In a little boutique upstairs of another business downstairs was owned by this guy. It was a stereo shop, and they sold records at that time. Vinyl was still around, and stereos and whatever. Anyway, I needed to use the restroom one night, went down and said, can I borrow the restroom? Met this guy that owned it. He was the reason I ended up leaving. I ended up marrying him. This is going, another year later. He was moving to Florida to open the same kind of business, and I knew that I had to go. I mean, it was a big decision because I was pretty close to my family, and they didn't really want me to go without being married. So we agreed, as long as we had a date set, I would go, and we did that. So I moved to Florida.
And where at in Florida?
West Palm Beach, which is down on the lower East Coast, before Fort Lauderdale. Or, if you've ever heard of these places, I'm sure you have. It was a really nice new place to be. Palm trees at that moment were great. They were graceful and beautiful, and the air was soft and clean, cleaner than New York. And it was interesting. I helped him build that business. I worked, alongside him and his brother and friend and whatever. And I liked it, but after a year of us working together, and by this time we had gotten married, went back to New York, had a wedding, whatever. And then I needed to do my own thing.
Yeah.
I've always kind of enjoyed my own space and and working on things that I enjoy. Well, I had, when I was 17, 18, worked in a dental office. And I decided to do that again. So I got a job in a dental office and in Palm Beach. So it was it was a cool office, and stayed there for 5 years.
Wow.
Then I was done. There was one morning I walked in and the door, as it always did, slammed behind me. And I looked at that door and I said, you know, you're not going to do that to me anymore. I'm done. And that day decided I was going to be leaving and told my boss that, I needed to go.
Time.
I always seem to know when it's time, or hope that I do. In any case, what was I going to do now? I honestly thought about dental school because I loved the materials. I loved all the stuff. And I thought that would be good. And Gainesville wasn't too far. And I actually told my husband about this idea. He wasn't crazy about it, but, we were talking about it. And the next thing I know, I got a phone call from the salesman that used to call in our office and sold us all the stuff. And he said, I have an idea. Can you meet me for lunch tomorrow? I said, sure. So we went and met, and he explained that there were no women in the sales field in Florida at the time.
For dental equipment.
For dental equipment and materials. Yeah, supplies. And I didn't have children, and I was free to kind of move around, as much as I wanted to. And he said, would you be interested in starting a territory? We will give you a territory. You will handle all the materials. My partner and I will handle the equipment side of it. So you don't have to worry about, moving chairs and whatever. And I thought, you know what? This is sounding pretty good. He said, okay. He said, I just have to introduce you to my partner. He doesn't know about this yet. And I said, oh, okay. He said, so why don't we try to get together again, whenever it was, a few days later, and I'll introduce you. And by that time, we'll have explained to him what I wanted to do. I said, okay. So we met again, sat down, and in walked this, what I considered very handsome gentleman, walked in the place and walked over to the table where Bill and I were sitting and sat down, and Bill introduced me to Warren. And I said, nice to meet you, and blah, blah, blah. Well, come to find out that Warren was not in favor of this idea to begin with. And I always tell this story, in cartoons, the little bubble over the head, that's the thought that you're having. Yeah. So I don't know whether he'll want me to share this, but my bubble was, who is this cocky son of a gun? I mean, I thought, yeah, really. And his bubble wasn't any nicer. It was like, who's this pushy broad from New York? Who is this woman? So Bill managed to talk Warren into driving me to Orlando the next day to be interviewed by the entire company. There were 13 men that own this business, and I was going to have to interview with many of them, not all of them, but many of them.
Wow, that's an intense interview process.
Well, yeah. Well, what is a 3-hour drive from West Palm to Orlando seemed as though it had lasted 15 minutes. We argued the whole way. There was nothing that we saw eye to eye on or agreed on. We were 10 years difference in generation. And so we came from, pretty different backgrounds. He was Canadian originally and moved to Florida when he was 13. And, my history. So it was very interesting, but I interviewed really well. And on the way home, he had to admit, I was pretty impressed with the way you answered all the questions. I said, oh, that's good. Well, they hired me, and I ended up training with each individual salesman to learn the ropes and to get to know customers, and they were introducing me to my customers. They call me wrong way, so my sense of direction doesn't exist. I have none. And so I was always lost. I was always having to call the office and say, how do I get to Dr. So-and-so? It was terrible. But I did well. I have to say that for many reasons, the marriage to my first husband was not working out. He was really against me being out on my own. He didn't like that I was the only woman. He was Italian. So, I mean, it was like this whole, and I was really exhausted from trying to appease him and myself. I mean, it was not going to be good even had I not done this job. So after like 3 years of this, I decided to get my own place and take care of myself. Well, my income was straight commission. And at that time, I mean, I still to this day don't know how I paid my bills. I really don't, because I wasn't making enough to pay them. But it seemed like every time something came up, I made a sale.
The universe was in your favor.
Well, the motivation was in my favor.
You were out there hustling.
That's, when you have to make it work.
You figure it out.
You figure it out. One of Edison's, I was telling Kayla, my hero is Thomas Edison. And one of his things is, there's always a way. Find it. I mean, that's the way it is. And so that's how I live my life, trying to choose what is right for my life and the people that I affect and the people in my life. Making sure that it's wholesome and good for everybody, and that I can be an encourager. Because it's one thing to be blessed all your life with the payment showing up at the right time. It's another thing to encourage other people to not be afraid, to move forward, to always know that there's a way. No matter what it looks like, there's always a way. So I get my biggest joy out of doing that. Florida became home. A few years later, it took a while, Warren and I actually got together. And
wow. He's
we got
sitting here
married.
too, by the way.
We have Warren with us today.
Poor guy didn't know he was going to be on this with me. We've been married. We're trying to remember. Our grandson is 38. So we're going to be married like 39 years. Can't believe it. And it's been great. Now, he being from Canada, me being from New York, we are both cold weather people. Florida was never a good fit for either one of us. The water is beautiful to see and smell. I don't want to be in it.
Sharks, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's one reason. Yeah, I don't particularly know how to swim very well either.
Hot and humid.
Yeah, bugs.
It's different to vacation than it is to live in work.
Absolutely. And palm trees really get boring after time. So we both love the mountains. We both love cold. We like snow. We like everything. And we started looking for other places to live. We went to Vermont, where our cousins live. We went to Maine, we went to Georgia. I mean, any place to get to a mountain. And friends of ours invited us out here like 25 years ago to visit. And that's a whole other story. That's how we ended up here.
In Montana?
In Big Timber.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're so happy you did.
You visited, loved it, and you're like, this is it.
Well, he came first. I was at home. He had gone on a Colorado River raft vacation with these friends, and they invited him to come to their place in Montana after that. So he comes and he calls me. I'm in Florida, and I said, hi, how are you? He'd been gone, a while. And I said, where are you? He said, I'm at the airport in Bozeman, just leaving the airport. He said, Reese, we're going to live here. I said, well, don't you think you should get further than the airport before you decide? Well, he was here for like 7 days, and every single day he called and said, we're coming out here. I'm going, okay, well, I'm happy to visit. So the following September, I guess, I don't know, I came and I had the exact same feeling when I breathed the air and looked at the sky, because sky is my thing. That was the end of it.
I know you always post beautiful pictures every day.
You see
I
the
do
sky.
see them.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I love the sky. So that's what happened, and that's how we ended up here.
Mm-hmm.
In the interim of being in the dental business, when I moved out and had my own place, somebody gave me a kitten.
Oh, how
I know.
exciting.
Yeah, her
Cute.
name was Spice, and she was the cutest little thing, and I was home with her a lot, and I put her litter box in my bathroom. And she got into the habit, because she was a kitten, of following me wherever I went. So when I would go into the bathroom for anything, she would come in as well, and she'd spot her litter box, and she'd use it. And I was right there, so I would clean it immediately. Mm-hmm. Well, when my job started to get busier, and my territory was building, and I wasn't home as much, I wasn't attentive enough, and cats have much more sensitive scent than we do. And if they don't like what they smell, especially their own waste, they don't want to go in there. So she started going outside the box. That's where, that case of going outside the box is not acceptable.
So is that what triggered your entrepreneur spark?
That was it. I had to find something that I could do for myself to make it better. And that's, how Kitty's WonderBox started.
So let's talk about Kitty's WonderBox.
Yeah, it was fun.
You're an inventor.
Fun. I became an inventor, and hence I love Thomas Edison. Yeah. I only have like 3 patents. He's got like 10,000.
I think 3 patents is more than most people. Or the average American.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how many little patents are sitting out there that people haven't done anything with, which is a shame. But it was all about my necessity, my needs. And spices, of course. And so I ended up partnering with a guy that didn't have the same vision as me. Important point, very important point. And tested all different materials that you could possibly use as a receptacle for cat litter. Mm-hmm. And I had to monitor Spice. So I would watch this poor cat every time she would go to use the bathroom, because I wanted to see how she reacted to whatever vessel I now put there. And I discovered the material similar to, the McDonald's drink things, right? That kind of pressed paper. So it's paper fiber, actually. And I experimented with that as much as I could, and then found manufacturers that worked in paper pulp products.
Okay.
So
how did you find that?
Thomas's Register, believe it or not. Okay. And at that time, it was only in the library in hardcover.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. You have to find it. It's different.
Spent hours at the library thumbing through, because Thomas's Register, of course, lists every manufacturer, every product, any need available, and found there were 2 at the time manufacturers of paper pulp in Wisconsin. That's the paper capital.
It's also the cheese capital.
Yeah. And I ate plenty of that.
Me too.
Really. So I had a request in for sheets of this stuff and created prototypes with duct tape.
Wow.
And put those in there. And Spice went right in and did her business. And after a few days, I noticed that there was no odor coming from that room. So I don't want to get into the details of why litter boxes smell as bad as they do, but this paper was neutralizing it in some way. And of course, it does. People, very often would use like newspaper print. So then I thought, it has to be leak proof as well. And the nursery industry have, as you've seen, paper pulp products that they put plants in. It's a lot of peas I just said.
You did it gracefully.
And they don't leak, right? Mm-hmm. So then I thought, okay, now I've got to make sure these manufacturers can work with this material. Well, we ended up, after a long time, adding like baking soda to it and almost like wax, if you will, to it. So it was leak-proof. Wow. The air still filtered through it, so it kept the litter dry. And it was odor-free. That was like a bonus I didn't expect. And that was it. I decided it was time to take it to market. And that's where my true lessons of inventing and marketing came in. Marketing was the big thing then.
And what was that process like of taking it to market, marketing it, getting people to buy it now?
So it's just like anything else, any other service or product. You find the people that would need it the most.
Your target market.
Big time target. So who would that be? But cat breeders, people that did cat shows. They were traveling. They were needing something odor-free. And this thing was 100% biodegradable that they could toss out at the end of the show and be done. Well, the boxes would last a long time, but I would always tell people, just like us, you want sanitary conditions here. Don't keep it more than 30 days. So I created a life cycle for it that needed to be replaced. Mm-hmm. So, and that was a big push. I had to make sure because they did last longer than that. They worked inside plastic litter boxes like a liner, so you didn't have to worry about cleaning that other thing anymore. There is no odor. We ended up with a jumbo, a regular, and the small wonder that I love. Is that cute? And that was for like ferrets and bunnies and things like that. So we went to cat shows, and if I tell you that Warren earned his stripes, let me tell you, every weekend we traveled in Florida mostly to local cat shows, and I would hand out these boxes to like half the room and not the other half, and people would, come and buy things from other vendors. And the side that didn't get the WonderBoxes would be at our table saying, how come we didn't get one? And, well, we're doing an experiment, no odor on this side of the room, marked odor on this side, And then we moved up into the bigger world of the Friskies, Cat Fancier Association International Cat Show. That took place all over the country. Wow. And we actually did one of our biggest shows. There were like 15,000 cats.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my goodness.
Don't even. Anyway.
That's a lot of cat boxes.
Yeah. In Atlanta, and Friskies noticed them and liked them and wanted to use them on the road with their cats because they have all their show cats that they perform and whatever.
Wow.
And that's where, it really started. But I would call every single pet store before we would arrive at these towns and tell them that we were going to be there. Do you want to give me an order for them now and coupons that people can come and get them from you? I'll send the business to you. I didn't want to retail these things myself. These were going to be wholesale only. And that's how I kept it the whole time.
Wow.
It was better that way. And it just went crazy after some time and a lot of work. And I can't even remember how many years. Well, I sold it just as we moved to Montana.
And so how long was it operating-ish?
I started it, and I think it was like 97 officially. And then moved here, like I said, in 2003.
And who did you sell it to, like a Friskies or something like that?
No, we sold it to a large, very large conglomerate company that owned other companies. So United Pet was the name of the company that bought it, and it went into their pet district. So by that time, we had gotten it into Petco and PetSmart and put it into Walmart for a short period of time and said, this is not our venue. This is not our customer, for many reasons. At the time, Walmart was pretty new here, and I really just didn't care for their business. It just wasn't good, and I got out of that. And I knew that if it needed to go any further, it was going to have to go in bigger hands than mine. And it was time to hand it off. So, yeah, it was over a year or more of negotiating. I learned early on, you always work with people that know their industry, and we were very fortunate in meeting with an amazing business broker in the pet industry. And he guided us and helped market it and get it to the level where it needed to be in order for this type of company to buy it. And so he actually put me together with the right people and made great contacts, and it went.
I have 2 questions, 3 questions actually. First question is, what tips would you give to people inventing products right now?
First of all, make sure you're on board. I mean, make sure you have the heart and an inner drive, because you never know from day to day what's going to hit you in the face. And unless you focus and keep your focus on your vision and what you want to happen, you will be able to navigate any roadblocks as long as you are looking at the goal. So I guess the roadblocks become the lessons, and you learn from every single one of them, and it builds stamina, it builds character, humility. You become very, very humble when you are trying to sell a product. And I'll tell you a very quick, funny little story.
Please do.
When I had to buy liability insurance on this paper box, and you have to do that if you're going to be in the big stores, you've got to have, at that time it was just $1 million you needed. I went to an attorney, a products attorney, and put the box on the table, and he looked at it and he goes, "That's a paper box." I said, "I know that."
It's actually paper,
and it's my
pulp
product.
But I need $1 million worth of liability insurance. And he's going, "It's a paper box." I was like, why? And I said, well, what if a cat ate it and choked? I have to cover that.
Or the dog or something.
Yeah, or anything for that matter. And he said, "Oh, yeah, okay." And I got my $1 million. So it doesn't really matter what it is you're selling, and it can seem so trivial to other people. But if you have the vision and the passion and you can see the future, it doesn't matter what other people think.
Yeah,
Just go for
Just
it.
go for
Again,
it.
Edison says, be courageous, have faith, and go ahead.
Oh, I love that.
That's good.
Okay, so my second question. You went through a year and a half long process of selling your product to a big national company. Yeah. What were some things that we wish you would have known then, or anything you would change, or tips that you would give to anybody else looking to make an exit like that?
I knew that when I was ready to sell it, it wasn't going to be up to me what the future of the product was. My wish was that it would be on the shelf forever, because I wanted to use it. But I think that you have to know ahead of time that people are not going to have the same vision and passion for your product. They see dollar signs at that point. And if that's what's important, then let it be. I think you just have to be willing to let go and walk away and hope that it lives on. WonderBox actually just kind of went away after 25 years. Somebody else is now going to be making a similar product, I found out, which I'm very grateful for.
Wow.
The same plant is going to be making them. So that's really nice. I had other products that I wanted to make, and I'm sorry that I didn't. I am, because I still think they would have been really useful and helpful. Do I have the energy to do that now? No. Somebody else can do it. I'll tell you about it, and you can do it. It's like, but I think that's the important thing, to know when your time is up and know that you did the best you could, and it fulfilled what you wanted it to fulfill for the time.
I love that.
And so you transitioned from, you sold, and then you guys moved to Montana. What'd you start doing when you got to Montana after selling a company or a product?
Yeah, I didn't know what I was going to do, and it worried Warren more than it worried me. But I got to keep her busy. Honestly, it segued into my tea business. Tea had always been in my life. That was my passion in my heart. Wherever I went, tea went. And wherever I was with people, it was offered. The hospitality around tea has always been delightful. And plus the taste of it, to me, it's great. So I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what I was going to do. I actually ended up buying into a local boutique that had a coffee bar. And of course, I didn't tell anybody, but I was thinking, I could be serving tea off that bar too. It was with two other partners that I went in, and they were not in the same place, nor could they ever be. And I was told, there aren't tea drinkers in Montana. Well, I knew I was one, and I also knew, again, there was a lot of research to be done, but I knew the history of Montana, and the people that settled here first were tea drinkers. And that doesn't just go away.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
You had the Chinese working on the railroads and the mines. You had the Europeans, all about tea. The Easterners were coming. They brought their silver tea sets with them when they didn't have enough room to bring more important things. So I knew it was here, and I started to sample people when it was my day on the bar, on the coffee bar. I would say, would you like to try some really good tea? I brought my own stash, and I would make them a cup, and all different kinds of people, young, old, male, female, and they did like it. So I knew it. And I kept saying, well,
I know I'm right.
That was my focus, my goal. So 6 months stint at the boutique, knew I wasn't going to stay. At a certain point, I was definitely not going to stay, and left. And then I was worried about what I was going to do. And a friend at the time was a tea person in the business, and she said, Riza, you have talked about this all your life. You need to do something with tea. And I said, yeah, I'll think about it. So Warren and I drove to Bozeman one day, and on the way to Bozeman, I'm staring out the window and trying to come up with a name of a company. I thought, well, that'll help spark the energy I need. And I was trying to bring into account my love of the history of the people that settled out west to begin with. The pioneers are just, to me, the women especially, I have to say, for everything that they went through and still go through. And then my love of tea. How can I bring these things together? And I thought Tumbleweed Teas was going to be the name of it. And I nailed it, and I said, that's it. I came up with the name, and I told Warren, it's going to be Tumbleweed Tea. I can't even say it now. Tumbleweed Teas. Okay. And I started to tell other people, and it kept popping out of my mouth as Tumblewood. I didn't know where that was coming from. Never heard the word before. And a friend of mine said, you need to Google that.
What does that mean?
What the heck?
Tumblewood.
So I did, and sure enough, now you know I'm a cat person, right? And you obviously know I'm a tea person. It brought me to a website of an artist in North Carolina that did watercolors of teapots and cats.
Oh.
Well, I
Like,
had
if this is
goosebumps.
a sign.
I still get goosebumps when I realize. So I called her and spoke to her. and said, why Tumblewood? Well, on her website, she had created this gigantic ball out of vine, like the wooden vine, whatever those are, like a grapevine almost.
Yes.
Yep.
Gigantic thing. And she put it in her garden, took a picture of it, and called it a Tumblewood. And that's why the word connected me to her site, because it was in her logarithm. I said, well, would you mind if I use that name for a tea company I'm thinking? She said, no, go ahead, do it. Hence, Tony Teas, my dear friend, made it a trademark for me.
Wow.
And that was
Tumblewood
how
Teas.
Tumblewood Teas started. Of course, now everybody calls it tumbleweed anyway, but it is Tumblewood. And the brand insignia is like a little open weave ball made from vines. So that's how Tumblewood started. And again, find your customers, the same thing. I knew I was going to have to find my customers. So I started to do local craft shows. And I have to tell you, I was getting my teas. My niece and a friend of hers and another friend actually created the first Tumblewood logo for me, a local friend. And she was great. And then the vision for something a little bit less homegrown, something a little bit more sophisticated that would do well eventually across the country.
Because you have that vision.
You got to always think ahead. And so my niece and her friend created the Tumblewood brand for me, and I have always loved it. It's just always, but although I just found an old T-shirt with the old logo on it and the old brand, and I love it too. That was the beginning.
It means something.
It does. But we actually started to do the Livingston Farmers Market, which was pretty good then. It's crazy good now. And sampling. It was all about sampling. And that's what happened. So through that farmers market, we ended up meeting Colin from Chico and other good venues that gave me the time to pitch them on it. And that's where it all started.
And were you making the tea? Like, what was that process like? Like, were you getting it shipped in? Were you making it?
No, we had our blends. We had our, what we wanted. But this friend of mine was doing the blending back in Florida and packaging it. We would send the packaging and it would come to us already packaged. So I started in my garage, and you could do that then because everything was packaged. Mm-hmm. There was no, risk of contamination at that time. But because of this farmer's market, I needed some help. And I actually hired Lori, who is my partner, her son, her 12-year-old son, Kyle, who is just adorable and a real entrepreneur, seriously, and very, very business-minded. I would never play Monopoly with him anymore. I told him I would never. He's just, a killer. Good. Anyway, he came along with me to sample, and Lori came to help set the tent up and just watch over Kyle. And she started to listen and started to get interested. She wasn't a tea drinker. She drank, I think Pepsi at the time or Diet Coke or something. And she started to take an interest in it as well. And I needed help. There was no doubt I was going to need help. And asked her if she would work for me part-time. And she did. She started working. And she actually found us our first office location and moved in, and we stayed there for a year, I think, or so, and then we moved up to a bigger location, but the teas were still coming to us.
From Florida.
Mm-hmm.
From Florida.
I was creating all the names of all the teas, and I, of course, asked Lori to help with that, too, as much as I could, but I had this vision, and it had to be Western, it had to be kind of fun. I didn't want my tea to be so serious that anybody I bumped into would feel like, because, at the time, tea wasn't getting top billing. the movement was definitely changing. Younger generation was more health conscious. They were looking for some alternative to coffee, and tea was becoming more important, and I could feel it because of the customers that we were getting and the response. I'm talking 10 and 12-year-olds coming in saying, Mom, can I get a cup of tea, whatever. Mm-hmm. And it just started to build. So I knew we had to stay true to our brand, and that was the history of the West and tea together. And then it happened. So we were in business, I guess, about 5 years. And Lori had become a partner by that time. And we got a phone call on a Friday afternoon. Now, I will say, having too many ducks in a row or chicks in a basket or eggs in a basket, this is the lesson of my life. Don't ever do that. Mm-hmm. I don't care how friendly you are with your suppliers. Don't ever do it all in one place. We did a little bit outside of that, thank goodness, because we had built some relationships, but pretty much it was all in one place. And it was a June afternoon, Friday, I will never forget in my life. I get a phone call from this person saying that she was just shutting down the operation.
Closing doors.
Completely, no warning. And we're like going, what? It's like, and we weren't the only ones, and I knew that. Mm-hmm. And she had a long list of customers that she did the same thing for. I said, you've got to give us some time. And I remember she said that she would get back to me and offered it to us. And I'm thinking, why is she offering this to us? I mean, we're just, a little. And Lori and I sat on the front step of her house for an hour, not saying a word. The two of us, if anybody could have taken an x-ray of our brains, they were like these coils just popping and exploding. It's like, what direction do you even go in now? To save yourself.
Yeah.
Or do you shut it down?
Yeah, fight or flight, and what do you do?
Yeah. And came back to the same old thing. You better have courage, you better have faith, and do something. And we made the decision to buy her out. And that was like monumental. That was huge.
Mm-hmm. Because not only are you now producing your own, mixing your own blends, but you're co-packing.
And bought her entire customer list.
Yeah.
Decided that we needed to save everybody. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just us. So we hired her top person to come to Montana for a couple of weeks, making phone calls, introducing me to their mm-hmm. customers, and explaining what happened. It was just the most crazy time ever in my life. It was a free fall, and I wasn't sure when it was going to stop. It was like, is this ever going to stop?
That's the craziest trust fall ever.
It was a huge. So we did that. It turned out not to be a good business decision because we paid her for these things, and she ended up staying in business anyway. So it was not a good business arrangement. Mm-hmm. But you know what? We had to let it go and say, we now have this customer list. We now have all the blending recipes, because it wasn't just our teas. It was everybody's teas. We had to learn how to do. Mm-hmm. And we did it. We had, I forgot to mention, 1 month before this happened, Lori and I put everything into buying our building. Everything was in there. And now we had to take on this. And that meant furnishing this building that we thought we were going to use one half of and rent the other half out. Mm-hmm. When we bought all of her stuff, it was 2 semis full. It filled that building. We had to then arrange it and rearrange it, and to this day, it still gets rearranged. But I have to say, it's more efficient than it's ever been, and running very well.
It is the best smelling factory I've ever toured. It's amazing. I mean, before you even walk in the door, you're like,
Yeah, you can smell
what
it.
is that?
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
And, we get to a point, or I got to a
You're
point
just
where
nose numb.
Yeah, the minute you walk in, you smell it, and then it's gone. And as you know, I have retired, and just to get to the end of that story. But when I took stuff of mine from the office and moved it to the house, I have this like little wicker thing that had stuff in it, and I put it in the house in my office. And when I walk by it, it makes me smile because I can smell. Yeah,
The tea.
yeah. It was like, oh yeah. Still have the scent.
And so for those listening, were you doing mostly wholesale?
We were doing when we did the move, yeah. We were wholesale. The only retail we did was again face to face. So if we were at a show of some kind, but pretty much it was wholesale. Then we created retail. There was a space in the building that made sense. I mean, we didn't use it as that first off, but one of our employees said, this needs to become a retail space. So it was turned into one. Had I known that, though, I was going to be the one manning it. I didn't know that.
Because your office is
My
right
office
there.
was right next to it, and nobody else wanted to come from the back to, whatever. But I have to say, I realized that gave me the opportunity to open the doors to people and talk tea. Mm-hmm. That's what I like to do. I just wanted everybody to experience tea. So it turned out to be good that I was able to do that. And as a matter of fact, the office hours, Monday through Thursday from 9 to 3 or something. I was like, if it's a retail space, this should be open Monday through Saturday, till 5. Or because people would always say, I came here and you weren't open. And anyway, I lost that battle a long time ago and finally decided, Fridays off are fine. It's all good.
Yeah.
People, again, were able to buy it other places. So
Like the Fort?
My goal, the Fort has an amazing, seriously amazing supply. And everybody in the town of Big Timber has supported Tumblewood, whether they knew it or not. They were supporting us. And the state of Montana is what I have called the smallest neighborhood of businesses I've ever been in. Everybody supports everybody else, and that is the sense of joy and blessing that we lived by. That's how Tumblewood grew, because people wanted it to grow. They wanted to help, and we were more than happy to help other businesses. It's got to be that way. And it's so much fun to see, although, people say, oh, I see Tumblewood everywhere. And I kind of think, oh, I hope it's not in too many places. But you know what? There isn't a venue that I wouldn't talk tea to. Seriously. I don't care if it's an eating establishment, a bar. I've seen it in places because I didn't sell it to everybody. We also go through a distributor. So I didn't always know where it was going. Mm-hmm. We also have an independent, or I should say had an independent salesperson out there putting in places. So I didn't always know where it was. So I'm just as happy as everybody else. When I go to a place and, Tumblewood's on the shelf.
There it is.
That's cool.
I get excited too. I'm like, I know her. I know them.
You know the tea.
We all know the tea. Yeah. Well, it's been so much fun having you and hearing your story. You've invented and done an amazing product and then brought something really unique and different to the state of Montana. And I think you are such a well-known Made in Montana brand. And so we like to end each episode with some rapid fire questions. And they're not so rapid. We call them rapid, but they're not. But anyways, we'll just take a quick minute to hear a message from a sponsor.
Thank you to the Small Business Development Center for sponsoring The Vault at 201 North Broadway. The Small Business Development Center offers free personalized support from business plans to financial projections and beyond, empowering small businesses to thrive. Reach out to us at bigsky.economicdevelopment.org. It's been such a blast, and we're ready to jump into our rapid fire questions. So my first question for you is, what is your favorite tea?
I should have known you were going to ask me that. You have to be careful not to sway people. And probably most people wouldn't want to drink my favorite tea. but my favorite is called Golden Wheat. That's the Tumblewood name for golden monkey. It's a beautiful golden black tea.
Oh, yeah.
And if it's a good one, it's smooth and caramely. It's just delicious.
So when you say if it's a good one, how do you if someone's listening and they're like, I'm more of a coffee person normally, but I can be swayed a little bit. How do you make it? Like, how do you prepare it from start to finish?
Well, first, good tea, quality tea. So again, you have to know where you're getting your stuff from. I mean, it has to be good source tea to begin with. But a teaspoon of any tea is all you need for a cup. If we're talking about, tumblers that are bigger, they can go with a tablespoon of tea. Loose tea, by far better than bag tea, but I'd say more than 50% of the tea that Tumblewood sells is bagged. Convenience. Mm-hmm. It's still full. It's not smashed into a powder like most other teas are in a bag. But if you have leaves sitting in a cup and you pour the right temperature, hot water, black tea, boiling for sure.
And you guys have a great guide too. There's a really beautiful guide. So it's like temperature with the tea. So then we pour.
Time.
Yep.
It's the tea, the time, and the temperature that you
The three
control.
T's.
The 3 T's.
And you pour it over the...
Always over the leaves.
Okay.
You should always heat your vessel first. So you pour some hot water into whatever it is and pour it out so that the thing isn't cold or, it's ready. Tea leaves, water, your timer is important. Black tea, 3 minutes at the most is all you need. And then you pour it through a strainer, if it isn't in a strainer, into your cup or whatever it is that you're using, and you're ready to go. Pu'er, which is an aged black tea that I recommend for coffee drinkers because it has got a very full, bold body like coffee. Mm-hmm. Doesn't taste like coffee, but it gives you the mouthfeel that coffee gives you. Mm-hmm. And I haven't missed very many people that have said, I'm just a coffee drinker. Try this and tell me what you think.
Okay, yeah.
5 minutes on that one, you get it good and dark and heavy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Green tea, the rule is don't ever pour boiling water over green tea because the leaves are too tender, burns them, and gives you a bitter cup every time.
That's
so
good. I like green tea.
Good to know.
Yeah.
1 to 2 minutes, all you want, and at like 160. The water doesn't boil ever. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's good to know. So I guess I have a little question following. What if it's like iced tea?
Wow. Yeah. Iced tea should be consumed all seasons. I always laugh when people say, well, we'll use it in the winter, but not. I'm going, why? People drink iced everything, cold drinks all year. Mm-hmm. Iced tea is unbelievable.
Love it.
Brewed the same way as hot tea because then you're going to get all the flavor from the leaf. If you cold brew tea leaves, it takes a long time for the flavor to come out. So hot water, let it come to room temperature, and then pour it over ice.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Okay. My question is, how do you start your day?
You're going to laugh.
I'm probably going to love it. We love hearing how people start
Most
their day.
mornings with a really good cup of coffee. I'm serious. I do. It has to be good.
Yes.
And yeah.
I'm a coffee tea, so I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
I mean, look, I drink wine too. I mean, you have to have variety in your life. And then I'll switch to water or tea depending on what's going on. But yeah, that's how I do.
So my final question, and this is because obviously I'm a small business lover. What advice would you give a small business owner getting started?
Get started.
That's easy.
Yeah, again, first try to figure out what your vision is and the need for what it is that you are going to be selling or presenting, and then figure out the people, that would benefit the most first, and then work your way through. But don't hesitate. That's my biggest thing. And I know I've said this to this group before, and I'll say it again. When I hear people say they should do this or someone should, I always say, well, why can't you be that person? You are they. It's like everybody gets started somewhere at some time.
So, I love that.
That's one of my favorite quotes. So I was going to bring it up if you didn't, and I'm glad you did. So we had you featured in our Edge of the Plains documentary film. So that's still available to stream and watch on YouTube for those listening if you want to see some of the visual tea components that have been talked about on our episode today. But you say that. I think you're like walking in a field when you say, well, maybe that's a visual anyways, but you say like, what's wrong with you? Why don't you do it? And it's really to just get started and do it. And I love that in the documentary. So where can people find Tumblewood Teas, connect with you guys on social, buy from you?
So there's a website and it has every product on the website of the shop, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 3.
Yeah.
But many grocery stores and local markets. And if someone has a place that they'd like to have it, call the office and have them connect with them. But many, many locations. And
Great. And is it just tumblewoodteas.com?
That's it.
And on Instagram too. I think it's just Tumblewood Teas.
Yes, it is.
Awesome.
Well, Riza, you're a true inspiration, and we just love you.
Well,
Thanks for coming in.
We're so happy to have you on.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Make sure you are subscribed to The Vault at 201 North Broadway, wherever you podcast, including YouTube.
Connect with us on Facebook at The Vault at 201 North Broadway and Instagram at The Vault_201.
Don't forget to visit us at thevault@201.com and subscribe to our newsletter.
We will see you next time.
Bye.